The Apex Protocol, decoding the chemistry of masculine power. In an era defined by plummeting testosterone metrics and chronic fatigue, the modern male physiology is currently under siege. We are not facing a mere dietary deficiency, but a systematic collapse of biological potency. Yet, buried within nature's biochemical library lie potent activators capable of rewriting your hormonal destiny. This is not about trends, this is about reclaiming primal nutritional sovereignty. Our investigation begins in the briny depths, unlocking the secrets of the ocean's most legendary aphrodisiac. To understand the bivalve primacy of the oyster in the pantheon of male performance, one must look past its reputation as a mere culinary luxury or a cliché of Valentine's Day marketing. The oyster is a biological marvel, a prehistoric filter feeder that has survived for hundreds of millions of years by perfecting the art of nutrient sequestration. When a man consumes an oyster, he is not simply eating seafood, he is ingesting a concentrated bioavailable cache of the ocean's most potent minerals, distilled through the animal's respiratory process. The investigation into the oyster's efficacy begins at the molecular level, specifically with the element zinc. While zinc is found in various terrestrial sources, the oyster is nature's undisputed zinc reservoir, containing more of this essential mineral per serving than any other food source known to mankind. This is not a trivial statistic, it is the cornerstone of male endocrine health. Zinc is the primary catalyst in the production of testosterone. Within the male physiology, zinc plays a critical role in the maintenance of the Leydig cells found in the testes, which are the biological factories responsible for secreting testosterone. Without adequate zinc, the machinery of masculinity begins to rust. The pituitary gland struggles to release luteinizing hormone, LH, the chemical messenger that signals the testes to produce testosterone. The modern dietary landscape is tragically deficient in zinc, largely due to soil depletion and the overconsumption of processed grains, which contain phytates, compounds that bind to minerals and prevent their absorption. In this context, the oyster acts as a nutritional rescue operation. When we analyze the biochemistry of the oyster, we find that it delivers zinc in a highly bioavailable organic form, often bound to amino acids like histidine and cysteine, which dramatically facilitates its uptake into the bloodstream. Once absorbed, this mineral does more than just boost serum testosterone levels. It acts as an aromatase inhibitor. Aromatase is the enzyme responsible for converting testosterone into estrogen, a process that naturally accelerates as men age and gain visceral fat. By inhibiting this conversion, the zinc derived from oysters helps maintain a favorable testosterone to estrogen ratio, preserving muscle mass, bone density, and libido. This is the biochemical defense mechanism that the oyster provides.
A shield against the feminizing effects of aging and environmental toxins. However, the reputation of the oyster as a legendary aphrodisiac extends beyond simple mineral content. For centuries, skeptics dismissed the stories of Casanova, who famously consumed 50 oysters for breakfast to sustain his libertine lifestyle, as mere folklore or the placebo effect. Modern chromatography and amino acid analysis have vindicated the libertine. In a landmark study conducted by American and Italian researchers, bivalves were found to be rich in rare amino acids, specifically D-aspartic acid, DAA, and N-methyl D-aspartate, NMDA. These are not standard building blocks of protein, they are neuroactive compounds. In animal studies, injections of these specific amino acids triggered a chain reaction in the endocrine system, stimulating the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland to release a surge of sex hormones. This suggests that the immediate rush or subtle psychoactive boost reported by oyster aficionados is not imagined, but a tangible neurochemical event. The oyster triggers a dopamine release while simultaneously priming the hormonal pump, creating a synergy between desire and capacity that few other foods can replicate. The historical trajectory of the oyster offers a fascinating lens into its status as a fuel for the elite. In the Roman Empire, oysters were a mania, transported alive in tanks across the Alps to feed the insatiable appetites of the aristocracy. The Romans understood intuitively what science would take 2 millennia to prove, that vitality was linked to the sea. They practiced early forms of aquaculture, with engineering marvels designed solely to fatten oysters for the emperor's table. This obsession carried through to the Gilded Age of New York City, where the oyster was the proletariat and the tycoon alike, fueling the industrial expansion of the American metropolis. It was the ubiquitous energy source of the 19th century male worker, providing a density of nutrition that bread and potatoes could never match. Today, as we face a crisis of metabolic health, the oyster represents a return to that ancestral wisdom, a food that is pure, unadulterated, and functionally designed to support the energetic demands of the male body. Furthermore, we must examine the broader nutritional profile of this mollusk to understand its role in physical stamina. Beyond zinc and rare amino acids, oysters are a powerhouse of vitamin B12. A single serving provides several times the daily recommended intake of this crucial vitamin. B12 is the engine of energy metabolism. It is essential for the formation of red blood cells and the proper functioning of the nervous system. A deficiency in B12 leads to anemia, lethargy, and a fog of fatigue that cripples performance in both the boardroom and the gym. For the active male, the high iron content in oysters works in tandem with B12 to ensure optimal oxygen transport to working muscles. Unlike the non-heme iron found in spinach, the heme iron in oysters is easily absorbed, fueling endurance and preventing the hypoxic crash during intense exertion. We must also address the concept of merroir, the marine equivalent of terroir, which dictates the specific nutrient density and flavor profile of the oyster based on its geography. An oyster from the cold, nutrient-dense waters of the North Atlantic will have a different lipid profile than one from the warmer waters of the Gulf. The cold water varieties often possess higher stores of glycogen, the animal starch that gives the oyster its sweet finish, and a more robust profile of omega-3 fatty acids. These fatty acids are critical for vascular health. Erections are fundamentally a vascular event, a hydraulic function dependent on unimpeded blood flow. The omega-3s found in oysters reduce systemic inflammation and improve endothelian function, ensuring that the blood vessels remain pliable and responsive to nitric oxide signals. Thus, the oyster supports the mechanics of performance just as effectively as it supports the hormonal drivers. There is also an ecological and ethical dimension to the consumption of oysters that appeals to the modern conscious male. Unlike industrial beef or poultry, which can be environmentally taxing, oyster farming is restorative. Oysters are filter feeders that clean the water they live in, removing excess nitrogen and promoting biodiversity. A single oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. Consuming them is a net positive for the planet, aligning the pursuit of personal biological power with ecological stewardship. This creates a psychological feedback loop of clean fuel that enhances the consumption experience. However, this filter feeding mechanism brings us to the necessary cautionary protocols. Because they concentrate everything in the water, oysters can harbor pathogens like Vibrio vulnarificus if harvested from warm, stagnant waters.
The discerning consumer must therefore be vigilant about sourcing, prioritizing cold water harvest sites and reputable purveyors. The raw consumption of the oyster is the most traditional method, preserving the delicate enzymes and amino acids that might be denatured by heat. However, lightly steaming or smoking the oyster retains the mineral content. Zinc is an element and cannot be destroyed by cooking, making it a viable option for the risk-averse. Ultimately, the oyster stands alone at the top of the nutritional hierarchy for male health because it addresses the triad of vitality: hormonal balance, vascular integrity, and neurological drive. It is a food that demands interaction. Shucking the shell requires force and dexterity, a primal ritual that precedes the meal. The liquid within the shell, the liquor, is a saline solution of sea minerals that hydrates and replenishes electrolytes lost during sweat and exertion. In a world of synthetic supplements and testosterone boosters with dubious ingredient lists, the oyster remains the gold standard, a complex, living biological system that transfers its vitality directly to the consumer. It is the ultimate biological hack, a creature that spends its entire life concentrating the ocean's power so that a man might borrow it for a night.
2. The Genesis capsule, eggs, and the resurrection of cholesterol. If the oyster is the king of the sea, the egg is the undisputed architect of life on land. For decades, this perfect biological capsule was the victim of a misguided medical smear campaign, demonized by a rudimentary understanding of cholesterol and heart health. The late 20th century saw the egg yolk vilified, banished from the breakfast tables of health-conscious men in favor of processed cereals and skim milk. This was a catastrophic error in nutritional science. Today, the investigative lens has shifted, and the egg has been exonerated, reclaiming its throne as nature's multivitamin and the premier anabolic food source for the male physiology. To understand the power of the egg, one must first appreciate its biological intent. It is a self-contained life support system, possessing every single nutrient required to construct a living, breathing organism from a single cell. When a man consumes an egg, he is ingesting the raw materials of life itself. The central controversy and the source of the egg's power lies in the yolk. The yolk is a concentrated sphere of cholesterol, a waxy spheroid molecule that the medical establishment spent 40 years trying to eliminate from the human diet. However, for the male seeking performance and hormonal optimization, cholesterol is not the enemy, it is the precursor. Testosterone is a steroid hormone, which means it is synthesized in the body from cholesterol. Without adequate dietary cholesterol, the body must tax the liver to produce it, and if levels fall too low, the synthesis of anabolic hormones is downregulated. The war on fat that defined the nutritional guidelines of the 1980s and 90s inadvertently castrated the hormonal potential of a generation. Current research has decoupled dietary cholesterol from blood serum cholesterol for the vast majority of the population, revealing that eating whole eggs actually improves the lipid profile by increasing HDL, the good cholesterol, and changing LDL particles to a larger, less atherogenic subtype. Beyond the hormonal substrate, the egg is the gold standard of protein quality. In the world of nutritional science, protein sources are rated by their biological value, BV, a metric that assesses how efficiently the body can absorb and utilize the amino acids present. The egg sets the benchmark with a BV of 100. Every other food is measured against it.
This is because the amino acid profile of an egg perfectly mirrors the requirements of human muscle tissue. It is rich in leucine, the primary branched-chain amino acid, BCAA, responsible for triggering muscle protein synthesis, MPS. When a man consumes eggs after resistance training, he is flipping the genetic switch for growth. But the synergy is critical here. Studies have shown that consuming the whole egg stimulates significantly more muscle growth than consuming the egg whites alone, even when protein content is matched. The yolk contains microRNA and other bioactive compounds that facilitate the utilization of the protein. The man who discards the yolk is throwing away the blueprint while keeping the bricks. Let us dig deeper into the micronutrient density of this Genesis capsule. One of the most critical yet often overlooked nutrients found in abundance in eggs is choline. Choline is a precursor to acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that is fundamental to muscle control, reaction time, and memory. In the context of performance, acetylcholine is the chemical that translates the will of the mind into the movement of the muscle. High-intensity focus, the zone state experienced by elite athletes, and the ability to maintain cognitive sharpness under fatigue are all heavily reliant on choline availability. Most modern men are deficient in choline. By consuming eggs, specifically the yolks, one fuels the nervous system, sharpening the mind-muscle connection that is essential for heavy lifting, complex athletics, or high-stakes professional environments. Furthermore, eggs are one of the few dietary sources of vitamin D, often referred to as a prohormone rather than a vitamin due to its steroid-like structure and function. Vitamin D receptors are found in almost every cell in the male body, including the Leydig cells of the testes. Adequate vitamin D levels are strongly correlated with higher testosterone levels and improved semen quality. In a modern existence defined by indoor labor and lack of sun exposure, the egg offers a dietary safeguard against the widespread deficiency that plagues the northern hemisphere. Coupled with the presence of vitamin A, vitamin E, and selenium, the egg acts as a potent antioxidant shield, protecting cells from the oxidative stress induced by intense physical exertion. The investigation into the egg must also address the Rocky Balboa archetype, the consumption of raw eggs. While cinematic,
The science suggests that cooking is superior. Raw egg whites contain avidin, a protein that binds tightly to biotin, vitamin B7, preventing its absorption and potentially leading to a deficiency over time. Furthermore, the bioavailability of the protein in cooked eggs is nearly 90%, whereas in raw eggs it drops to roughly 50%. Heat denatures the proteins, unfolding them and making them accessible to digestive enzymes. However, the method of cooking matters. Overcooking the yolk to a chalky gray oxidizes the cholesterol, rendering it less beneficial and potentially inflammatory. The soft-boiled or over-easy approach is the nutritional sweet spot, pasteurizing the white to neutralize avidin and maximize protein absorption, while keeping the yolk liquid and the delicate fats intact. We must also scrutinize the source. Not all eggs are created equal. The industrial egg, laid by a hen confined to a battery cage and fed a diet of soy and corn, is a compromised product. It is often higher in pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. In contrast, the pasture-raised egg is a superior nutritional entity. Hens that are allowed to forage for bugs, worms, and greens produce yolks that are deep orange, a visual marker of high carotenoid content, lutein and zeaxanthin. These pasture-raised eggs have been found to contain significantly more vitamin E, more beta-carotene, and a much more favorable ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids. The investment in high-quality eggs is an investment in higher-quality raw materials for the body. The difference is palpable not just in the nutritional data, but in the taste and the richness of the yolk. The versatility of the egg also contributes to its standing as a top performance food. It is the ultimate fast food, capable of being prepared in minutes, portable, and relatively inexpensive compared to other high-quality proteins like steak or wild salmon. This accessibility means that it can be a consistent staple, the bedrock of a nutritional strategy rather than an occasional luxury. For the man seeking to lose body fat while maintaining muscle, the recomposition holy grail, the egg is an invaluable tool. It scores incredibly high on the satiety index, meaning it induces a feeling of fullness that suppresses appetite for hours after consumption, preventing the snacking and caloric surplus that derails progress. In the final analysis, the egg is a testament to the elegance of nature. It is a compact, a protective vessel containing the spark of life. For the male physiology, it provides the structural proteins for muscle, the cholesterol substrates for hormones, the choline for the brain, and the vitamins for cellular health. The era of the egg white omelet was a dark age of nutritional ignorance. The renaissance of the whole egg signifies a return to a robust, chemically sound understanding of how to fuel the human machine.
To crack an egg is to unlock a potent biological potential, a daily ritual that reinforces the foundation of strength and stamina. It is quite literally the breakfast of champions, not by marketing slogan, but by biochemical fact.
3. The River King, Salmon and the Lipid Revolution. In the grand narrative of nutritional evolution, few organisms occupy a space as revered and complex as the salmon. To the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, the salmon was not merely food, it was a deity, a cyclical promise of renewal that swam upstream against the forces of gravity and death to sustain the tribe. In the modern context of male performance, the salmon retains this divine status, though the reverence is now directed toward its biochemical profile rather than its spiritual essence. This fish represents the pinnacle of functional fat. For decades, the Western diet has been paralyzed by a phobia of lipids, a misguided crusade that stripped the male brain and body of essential raw materials. The salmon is the antidote to this era of starvation. It brings to the table the master molecule of cardiovascular and cognitive health, omega-3 fatty acids. To understand why salmon is non-negotiable for the high-performing male, we must first descend into the microscopic architecture of the human cell. Every cell in the body is encased in a lipid bilayer, a membrane that acts as the gatekeeper, deciding what nutrients enter and what waste exits. The fluidity and integrity of this membrane are dictated by the fats we consume. When a man's diet is dominated by trans fats or excessive omega-6s found in cheap vegetable oils, the cell membrane becomes rigid and unresponsive. Signals get jammed, insulin sensitivity drops, inflammation rises. However, when the diet is rich in the long-chain fatty acids eicosapentaenoic acid (EPA) and docosahexaenoic acid (DHA), found in abundance in wild salmon, the cell membranes become pliable and highly permeable. This cellular fluidity is the bedrock of metabolic efficiency. It ensures that testosterone and other hormones can bind to their receptors effectively. Without this lipid integration, a man can have high testosterone levels in his blood but still suffer from symptoms of low T because the cellular reception is compromised. The specific relevance of salmon to male performance, however, is most acutely felt in the vascular system. We must be blunt. Sexual performance is a hydraulic event. It is predicated on the body's ability to rapidly vasodilate and shunt blood into the cavernous tissues of the anatomy. This process is governed by the endothelium, an inner lining of the blood vessels, which releases nitric oxide to signal relaxation.
The EPA found in salmon is a potent anti-inflammatory agent that scrubs the endothelium, reducing the oxidative stress that leads to arterial stiffening. Regular consumption of salmon acts as a systemic pipe cleaner, ensuring that the vascular highways remain open and responsive. This translates directly to stamina, not just in the bedroom, but on the track and under the barbell. By improving blood flow, salmon enhances oxygen delivery to skeletal muscle, delaying the onset of lactic acid accumulation and improving VO2 max, the gold standard of aerobic fitness. But the salmon's power extends beyond the blood. It feeds the command center. The human brain is approximately 60% fat, and a significant portion of that architecture is comprised of DHA. In the high-stress environment of modern masculinity, characterized by information overload, sleep deprivation, and chronic cortisol spikes, the brain is under constant assault. Neuroinflammation is the silent killer of focus and drive. The DHA provided by salmon crosses the blood-brain barrier to actively repair neuronal membranes and facilitate neurotransmitter signaling. Studies have consistently linked high omega-3 intake with reduced rates of depression and anxiety, conditions that are often the root cause of libido loss and performance anxiety. In essence, salmon provides the hardware upgrades necessary for the software of the mind to run at peak processing speed. However, an investigation into salmon is incomplete without addressing the astaxanthin anomaly. Why is salmon pink? It is due to astaxanthin, a ketocarotenoid pigment produced by microalgae, which is eaten by krill, which are in turn eaten by the salmon. This compound is one of the most powerful antioxidants in nature, often cited as being 6,000 times more potent than vitamin C. In the salmon, astaxanthin serves a critical function. It protects the fish's omega-3 fats from oxidation during its grueling upstream migration. In the human body, it performs a similar miracle. It accumulates in the skin, protecting against UV radiation, but more importantly for the athlete, it accumulates in the muscles. Astaxanthin has been shown to improve endurance and reduce muscle damage during exercise by neutralizing the free radicals produced by mitochondrial respiration. It is a natural performance enhancer that allows the salmon to swim hundreds of miles against a current and allows the man to push through the final barrier of pain in a workout. Yet, this nutritional utopia is threatened by a dark reality, the industrialization of the ocean. We must draw a sharp, uncompromising line between wild-caught salmon and farmed salmon, aquaculture. This is not a subtle distinction, it is a chasm. Farmed salmon are the aquatic equivalent of battery-caged hens. Raised in crowded net pens that act as breeding grounds for sea lice and disease, these fish are often fed a pelletized diet of soy, corn, and hydrolyzed chicken feathers, ingredients a salmon would never encounter in the wild. Consequently, the nutritional profile is warped. Farmed salmon contains significantly higher levels of inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids and typically has a much lower concentration of vitamin D and astaxanthin. In fact, the flesh of farm salmon is naturally gray due to the lack of wild krill in their diet. The pink color is artificially induced via a petrochemical dye added to their feed pellets, selected from a Salmofan color swatch to appeal to consumer expectations. Furthermore, the environmental toxicology report on farm salmon is concerning. Due to the bioaccumulation of toxins in the fat tissue, higher levels of polychlorinated biphenyls and dioxins, industrial pollutants that are known endocrine disruptors. For the man seeking to optimize his hormonal health, consuming a food source laden with estrogen-mimicking chemicals is counterproductive. The investigation leads inevitably to the conclusion that sourcing is paramount. The sockeye, coho, and king Chinook salmon of the Alaskan and Pacific waters are the gold standard. These fish live their lives in the pristine, cold waters of the north, feeding on a natural diet that results in a lean, nutrient-dense protein source. The king salmon in particular is the prize, a massive creature that possesses the highest oil content, providing a caloric density that fuels the rugged demands of the active male metabolism. The culinary application of this superfood also requires a tactical approach. The omega-3 fatty acids are delicate. They are polyunsaturated fats that can be damaged by excessive heat. Deep frying salmon is a nutritional crime, destroying the very lipids one seeks to ingest. The Japanese method of sashimi or the gentle poaching techniques of the French are superior, preserving the integrity of the DHA and EPA. Moreover, the skin of the salmon, often discarded by the uninitiated,
is a reservoir of collagen and concentrated fats. Eating the skin is a nutritional multiplier, providing the glycine and proline needed for joint, tendon, and ligament health, connective tissues that are often the first to fail in strength athletes. In the final assessment, the salmon is a creature of endurance, and by consuming it, we co-opt that endurance. It represents a perfect synergy of protein and functional fat, a package that supports the heart, the brain, and the reproductive system simultaneously. In a world where men are dying of heart disease, the #1 killer, and suffering from cognitive decline, the salmon offers a delicious preventative shield. It is a food that connects the modern man to the wild, forcing him to acknowledge the difference between a creature born of the open ocean and a product manufactured in a floating cage. To eat wild salmon is to eat the energy of the river and the sea, distilled into a fillet of vibrant, life-affirming pink.
4. The primal slab, lean beef and the anabolic imperative. If salmon is the fuel of the mind and the vessels, lean beef is the mortar of the muscle and the bone. It is the most controversial, politicized, and emotionally charged entry on this list. For the past half-century, red meat has been the villain of the nutritional narrative, blamed for everything from climate change to colon cancer. Yet despite the relentless public relations assault, beef remains the central pillar of the male diet across cultures and eras. Why? Because the male physiology is evolutionarily adapted to hunt, kill, and consume ruminants. The expensive tissue hypothesis in anthropology suggests that it was the consumption of nutrient-dense meat that allowed the human brain to expand while the digestive tract shrank. We traded a large gut for a large brain, powered by the density of animal flesh. To deny beef is to deny the fuel that made us human. The investigation into beef's efficacy for male performance centers on its role as the ultimate anabolic agent. While eggs have a perfect protein score, beef brings a unique matrix of micronutrients that are specifically tuned for explosive power and strength. The headliner here is creatine. While the supplement industry generates billions selling creatine monohydrate powders, beef is nature's original source. A specific compound of amino acids, creatine is stored in the muscles as phosphocreatine. During high-intensity, short-duration exertion, like a heavy deadlift or a 100-meter sprint, the body relies on the ATP-PC energy system. Phosphocreatine donates a phosphate molecule to regenerate ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the currency of cellular energy. Red meat is saturated with creatine. A man who consumes steak regularly keeps his muscular creatine stores topped off, resulting in greater power output, increased work capacity, and visible muscle fullness due to cell volumization. But the power of beef goes deeper into the very blood that fuels the machine. We must discuss iron, specifically heme iron. Plant-based sources of iron, non-heme, are notoriously difficult for the body to absorb, requiring specific cofactors like vitamin C, and often being blocked by anti-nutrients like phytates. Heme iron, found exclusively in animal tissue, is absorbed with high efficiency. For the male athlete, iron is the carrier of oxygen. It binds to hemoglobin in the blood and myoglobin in the muscle cells.
Myoglobin is the oxygen storage unit within the muscle tissue itself. When you see the red juice in a rare steak, you are not looking at blood, you are looking at myoglobin water. Consuming this replenishes the body's ability to transport oxygen to working tissues, preventing the hypoxia that leads to premature fatigue. A man with optimal iron levels has a higher threshold for physical punishment. The hormonal argument for beef is equally compelling. We return again to the importance of saturated fat and cholesterol as the precursors to testosterone. While the medical establishment advocates for ultra-lean diets, the endocrine system requires a baseline of saturated fat to function optimally. Lean beef provides this in a balanced ratio.
Furthermore, beef is a powerhouse of zinc, rivaling the oyster in its importance for maintaining testosterone levels, and selenium, a trace mineral vital for sperm motility and thyroid function. The thyroid is the master regulator of metabolism. A sluggish thyroid leads to weight gain, lethargy, and low libido. The nutrient density of beef supports the thyroid, keeping the metabolic fire burning hot. We must also shine a light on carnitine, a compound named after the Latin word for flesh, carnis. Carnitine is the ferryman of the cellular world. It transports long-chain fatty acids into the mitochondria to be burned for energy. Without adequate carnitine, the body struggles to access its fat stores for fuel. Beef is the richest natural source of carnitine. For the man seeking the shredded physique, low body fat with high muscle mass, beef provides the double mechanism of fueling muscle growth via protein and creatine and facilitating fat loss via carnitine. It is the metabolic multi-tool. However, the red meat category is too broad. The investigation demands a distinction between the processed sludge of the fast food industry and the intact muscle of a grazing animal. The epidemiological studies that link red meat to disease often fail to separate the consumer of hot dogs and nitrates from the consumer of steak and vegetables. When isolated, unprocessed lean beef shows a neutral or beneficial impact on health markers in active populations. But the source of the beef introduces a layer of complexity similar to the salmon debate, grass-fed versus grain-fed. Conventionally raised cattle, grain-fed, spend the last portion of their lives in concentrated animal feeding operations, CAFOs.
Eating corn and soy to bulk up rapidly, this diet alters the fatty acid profile of the meat, increasing the ratio of inflammatory omega-6s and reducing the levels of beneficial compounds. In contrast, grass-fed and grass-finished beef, cattle that eat nothing but pasture their entire lives, is a different biological product. It contains up to 5 times more omega-3 fatty acids than grain-fed beef. More importantly, it is rich in conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, a unique fatty acid that has been shown in clinical trials to aid in body fat reduction and possess anti-carcinogenic properties. Grass-fed beef is also higher in precursors for vitamin A and E, giving the fat a yellowish tint, beta-carotene, compared to the stark white fat of grain-fed cattle. For the man treating food as fuel, the grass-fed steak is the premium, high-octane option. There is also a psychological and sensory dimension to beef that cannot be ignored. The Maillard reaction, the chemical browning of meat when it hits a hot grill, releases a bouquet of aromatic compounds that trigger a primal hunger response. Chewing through a dense, fibrous steak requires mechanical effort. It stimulates the release of gastric juices and signals satiety to the brain more effectively than liquid calories or soft carbohydrates. There is a ritualistic aspect to the consumption of fire-roasted meat that connects the modern man to his hunter ancestors. It is a meal that signifies success, strength, and dominance. In the cultural lexicon, the steak dinner is the reward for a job well done. However, we must address the environmental elephant in the room. The criticism of beef production regarding water usage and methane emissions is valid but often lacks nuance. The emerging field of regenerative agriculture argues that grazing ruminants are essential for soil health, carbon sequestration, and the reversal of desertification. When cattle are managed properly, mimicking the migratory patterns of bison herds, they stimulate grass growth, which pulls carbon from the atmosphere and stores it in the soil. Thus, the ethical carnivore can opt for beef that is not just less bad, but actually restorative to the ecosystem. This aligns the pursuit of personal strength with planetary health, a crucial consideration for the forward-thinking male. In terms of cuts, lean beef usually points toward the sirloin, the tenderloin, or the flank. These cuts offer a massive protein-to-calorie ratio.
A 6-ounce sirloin can deliver nearly 40 grams of protein for roughly 300 calories. This efficiency is unmatched. The ribeye, while delicious, carries a much higher fat load, which is acceptable for the ketogenic athlete or the hard gainer, but the lean cuts are the scalpel for the man sculpting a physique. Preparation is key. Charring meat to a crisp creates heterocyclic amines, HCAs, which are carcinogenic. Gentle cooking methods or cooking to medium rare mitigate this risk while preserving the bioavailability of the nutrients. Ultimately, lean beef is the heavy artillery of the diet. It is dense, heavy, and potent. It provides the feeling of being fed that leaves and salads simply cannot replicate. It anchors the meal and anchors the body. In an age of frailty and synthetic substitutes, beef remains the primal slab, a reminder that to build a body of iron and muscle, one must consume the elements of iron and muscle. It is the food of the warrior, the builder, and the survivor. To cut into a steak is to claim one's place at the top of the food chain, accepting the energy transfer that has driven human evolution for 2 million years. It is not just dinner, it is biological destiny on a plate.
5. The Green Arsenal, Pumpkin Seeds, and the Prostate Shield. In the vast, often confusing landscape of nutritional supplements and performance enhancers, the most potent weapons are frequently the most unassuming. The pumpkin seed, or pepita, is the quintessential example of this phenomenon. Historically discarded as mere organic waste during the carving of jack-o'-lanterns or relegated to the status of a salty snack, the pumpkin seed is in reality a dense biological munition designed by nature to protect and empower the male reproductive system.
The investigation into this seed reveals a nutritional profile so specifically tuned to the needs of the male physiology that it borders on the miraculous. While oysters may hold the title for the highest zinc content per gram, pumpkin seeds represent the most accessible, versatile, and chemically complex plant-based matrix for sustaining masculine vitality. They are the green arsenal, a daily defense protocol against the specific biological threats that target men as they age: prostate enlargement, testosterone decline, and the silent epidemic of magnesium deficiency. To understand the primacy of the pumpkin seed, one must first confront the crisis of the modern prostate. Benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, the enlargement of the prostate gland, is an inevitability for a staggering percentage of the male population. It restricts urinary flow, disrupts sleep with frequent nocturnal awakenings, and can severely hamper sexual function. The pharmaceutical interventions for this condition often come with a laundry list of side effects, including libido suppression. Enter the pumpkin seed. Research, particularly from Europe where phytotherapy is integrated into mainstream medicine, has identified specific phytochemicals within the oil of the pumpkin seed, most notably delta-7-sterine and beta-cetirizine, that interfere with the proliferation of prostate cells. These phytosterols structurally resemble cholesterol and act as mild inhibitors of 5-alpha reductase, the enzyme responsible for converting testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, DHT. While DHT is essential for development in puberty, in the adult male, excess DHT is the primary driver of prostate growth and male pattern baldness. By modulating this conversion, pumpkin seeds act as a biological breakwater, preserving the prostate's structural integrity and potentially slowing hair loss, all while sparing the circulating testosterone needed for muscle and drive. However, the seed's utility extends far beyond the prostate. We must conduct a deep dive into the mineral that defines the pumpkin seed's energetic potential: magnesium. We are currently living through a magnesium gap. Industrial agriculture has stripped the soil of this vital mineral, and the stress of modern living causes the body to excrete it at alarming rates. Magnesium is involved in over 600 enzymatic reactions in the human body, but for the performance-oriented male, one function reigns supreme: the synthesis of adenosine triphosphate, ATP. ATP is the raw fuel of the cell. Without magnesium, the body cannot stabilize the ATP molecule. A deficiency results in a metabolic bottleneck. No matter how much protein or carbohydrate one consumes, the engine cannot convert it into usable torque. The pumpkin seed is one of the richest natural sources of magnesium on the planet. A mere handful provides a substantial portion of the daily requirement, effectively unlocking the body's energy reserves. This magnesium load also plays a critical role in blood pressure regulation. Hypertension is a silent killer of erectile function, as it damages the delicate microvessels of the penis. Magnesium acts as a natural calcium channel blocker, relaxing the arterial walls and ensuring that blood pressure remains within a range that supports rather than destroys vascular health. The investigation leads us next to the intersection of sleep and hormones. The modern male is chronically sleep deprived, a state that is catastrophic for testosterone production. The majority of testosterone is synthesized during the REM and deep wave cycles of sleep. Cut sleep short and you chemically castrate yourself. Pumpkin seeds offer a unique biochemical solution to this dilemma through their high content of tryptophan. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid that serves as the precursor to serotonin, the neurotransmitter of well-being and relaxation. In the darkness of the evening, the pineal gland converts this serotonin into melatonin, the hormone that regulates the sleep-wake cycle. By consuming pumpkin seeds later in the day, a man provides his brain with the raw materials to construct a robust sleep architecture. This is not a sedative effect, but a regulatory one. It ensures that the body can enter the deep restorative states where hormonal regeneration occurs. Thus, the pumpkin seed is a dual-phase performance food. It fuels energy production during the day via magnesium and facilitates hormonal recovery at night via tryptophan. We must also analyze the specific variety of pumpkin seed known as the Styrian oil pumpkin, Cucurbita pepo var styriaca. Native to the Styria region of Austria, these pumpkins have evolved a genetic mutation that results in hull-less seeds. They grow without the fibrous outer shell, appearing as dark emerald green gems. The oil extracted from these seeds is a culinary and medicinal treasure, often referred to as green gold. It is a concentrated source of antioxidants, specifically vitamin E in the form of gamma-tocopherol, and carotenoids like lutein and zeaxanthin. Unlike the clear, refined oils that line supermarket shelves, Styrian pumpkin seed oil is thick, dichroic, appearing dark red in bulk and green in thin layers, and intensely nutty. The antioxidant capacity of this oil protects the lipids within the cell membranes from oxidative stress. For the active male, whose high metabolic rate produces a surplus of free radicals, this protection is essential for preventing cellular aging and maintaining tissue elasticity. The oil has become a staple in the functional medicine community for its ability to lower inflammation markers systemically, a crucial factor in maintaining joint health for the lifting athlete. The culinary application of the pumpkin seed requires a tactical approach to avoid the pitfalls of anti-nutrients. Like most seeds and nuts, pumpkin seeds contain phytic acid, a compound that binds to minerals like zinc and iron, preventing their absorption in the gut. To circumvent this, the activated or sprouted pumpkin seed is the superior choice. Soaking the seeds in salt water and then dehydrating them at low temperatures breaks down the phytic acid, effectively unlocking the mineral content and making the nutrients bioavailable. This process also mimics the natural germination of the seed, increasing its enzymatic activity. For the man seeking the highest ROI, return on investment, from his diet, sourcing sprouted seeds is a necessary protocol. Furthermore, the fats in pumpkin seeds are polyunsaturated and susceptible to oxidation if exposed to high heat. Roasting them until they are dark brown destroys the delicate omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids and denatures the proteins.
They should be consumed raw or lightly toasted at low temperatures to preserve their chemical integrity. There is also a parasitic dimension to the history of the pumpkin seed that warrants mention in any thorough investigation. Traditional medicine systems, from Native American herbalism to Chinese traditional medicine, TCM, utilized pumpkin seeds as an anthelmintic, an agent that expels intestinal parasites. The compound cucurbitacin, found in the thin green skin of the seed, paralyzes worms, specifically tapeworms, allowing the body to expel them. While modern sanitation has reduced this risk, the principle highlights the seed's role as a gut guardian. A healthy gut microbiome is the foundation of the immune system and neurotransmitter production. The high fiber content of the pumpkin seed acts as a prebiotic, feeding the beneficial bacteria in the colon. A man with a compromised gut cannot absorb nutrients efficiently, leading to a state of overfed but undernourished. The pumpkin seed helps maintain the integrity of the digestive tract, ensuring that the fuel put into the machine is actually utilized. Culturally, the pumpkin seed, or pepita, is a cornerstone of Mexican cuisine, used to thicken moles and sauces, providing a richness and depth of flavor that defines the region's gastronomy. This ancient usage points to an intuitive understanding of the seed's nutritional density. It was a survival food, a portable source of protein and fat that could sustain warriors and travelers. In the modern context, it remains the ultimate portable fuel. It does not require refrigeration, it is calorically dense, and it provides a satiety signal that curbs cravings for processed sugars. For the man engaged in intermittent fasting or ketogenic protocols, the pumpkin seed is an invaluable tool for bridging the gap between meals without spiking insulin levels. In the final analysis, the pumpkin seed is a testament to the concept that size does not equal power. Within this small, flat green envelope lies a complex machinery of hormonal support. It addresses the big three of male decline: prostate health, sleep quality, and energy metabolism. It is a food that demands to be taken seriously, moved from the garnish pile to the center of the dietary strategy. To consume pumpkin seeds is to ingest a localized biological shield, a proactive measure against the ravages of time and stress. It is the green vitality of the earth.
Condensed and packaged for the specific requirements of the masculine form.
6. The cerebral nut, walnuts, and the vascular renaissance. If the pumpkin seed is the shield of the prostate, the walnut is the architect of the mind and the guardian of the blood. In the ancient doctrine of signatures, a philosophical concept suggesting that herbs and foods resemble the body parts they treat, the walnut is the most famous example. Its hard shell mimics the skull. The kernel inside, with its two hemispheres and convoluted folds, bears a striking resemblance to the human brain. For centuries, this was viewed as poetic coincidence. Modern science, however, has validated a poetry. The walnut is the premier neuronutrient in the plant kingdom, but its influence cascades down from the brain to the vascular system, and ultimately to the very seed of life itself, the sperm. The investigation into the walnut reveals a food that is uniquely positioned to counteract the Western phenotype of inflammation, cognitive fog, and reproductive decline. The biochemical headline of the walnut is alpha-linolenic acid, ALA. It is the only tree nut that contains a significant amount of this plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. While we have discussed the marine omega-3s, EPA and DHA, in the context of salmon, ALA plays a distinct and vital role. Although the conversion rate of ALA to EPA-DHA in the human body is notoriously inefficient, often less than 10%, this does not render ALA useless. On the contrary, ALA has independent mechanisms of action. It integrates into the cell membranes, reducing systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. But perhaps more importantly, the presence of ALA in the diet acts as a sparring partner for the other fats, balancing the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. The modern diet is drowning in omega-6s from soybean and corn oil, creating a pro-inflammatory state. Walnuts help tip the scales back toward equilibrium. This balance is critical for the active male, as chronic inflammation is the enemy of recovery, joint health, and cardiovascular efficiency. The vascular argument for walnuts is anchored in the amino acid L-arginine. Walnuts are a rich source of this precursor to nitric oxide, NO. Nitric oxide is a gas that acts as a signaling molecule in the cardiovascular system, telling the smooth muscle cells lining the blood vessels to relax and widen, a process known as vasodilation. This is the exact mechanism targeted by erectile dysfunction drugs like Viagra. While a handful of walnuts will not produce the immediate Acute effect of a pharmaceutical, regular consumption creates a tonic effect, maintaining the elasticity and responsiveness of the endothelium, the vessel lining. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition demonstrated that walnut consumption significantly improved endothelial function, even after a high-fat meal that would typically impair blood flow. For the male seeking peak performance, this means better pumps in the gym due to increased blood volume to the muscles and reliable, robust function in the bedroom. It is hydraulic optimization through dietary intervention. However, the most groundbreaking research on walnuts concerns the fertility crisis. Sperm counts in Western nations have dropped by over 50% in the last 40 years, a phenomenon driven by environmental toxins, poor diet, and sedentary lifestyles. In this bleak landscape, the walnut appears as a beacon of hope. A landmark randomized controlled trial conducted at UCLA investigated the effect of adding 75 grams of walnuts per day to the diet of young men. The results were statistically significant. The walnut group showed marked improvements in sperm vitality, whether they are alive, motility, how well they swim, and morphology, their physical shape. The researchers attributed this to the unique synergy of ALA and the high antioxidant content of the nut. Sperm cells are encased in a membrane rich in polyunsaturated fats, making them highly susceptible to oxidative attack. The antioxidants in walnuts, specifically rare polyphenols like petangulagen, protect the sperm from this damage, preserving the genetic payload. For the man concerned with legacy and virility, the walnut is a non-negotiable dietary addition. Let us return to the brain, the organ the walnut mimics. The cerebral nut earns its name through its ability to clear the neural trash. The brain consumes 20% of the body's energy, generating a massive amount of metabolic waste. As men age, the brain's ability to clear this waste diminishes, leading to the accumulation of protein plaques associated with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. The polyphenols in walnuts have been shown to reduce the oxidative stress and inflammation in the brain that drive this neurodegeneration. Furthermore, walnuts stimulate the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein that encourages the growth of new neurons and synapses. In an information economy where mental acuity is the primary currency,
The walnut acts as a cognitive performance enhancer. It supports working memory and the speed of information processing, allowing the male executive or creative to maintain focus during extended periods of deep work. The investigation must also address the gut-brain axis. We now know that the gut microbiome exerts a profound influence on mood and mental health. Walnuts act as a potent prebiotic. The fiber and fatty acids in the nut are not fully absorbed in the small intestine. They travel to the colon, where they ferment and feed specific strains of beneficial bacteria, such as Butyrindibrio and Rhozoburia. These bacteria produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that nourishes the gut lining and reduces inflammation throughout the entire body. By improving the microbiome, walnuts indirectly support the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, the majority of which are actually produced in the gut, not the brain. Thus, the walnut stabilizes mood and resilience against stress, key components of the alpha psychological profile. Historically, the walnut has always been associated with royalty and power. Originating in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, they were reserved for the elite and traded along with Silk Road. The Romans called them juglans rhizia, literally Jupiter's royal acorn. They understood that this food was dense with energy and vitality. In traditional Persian medicine, walnuts were prescribed to treat inflammation and to strengthen the intellect. This historical lineage underscores the nut's status not as a mere snack, but as a functional tool for the ruling class. However, the storage and handling of walnuts are critical to their efficacy. Because of their high polyunsaturated fat content, walnuts are extremely perishable. A rancid walnut is not just untasty, it is pro-inflammatory. The oxidized fats contain free radicals that damage the body rather than heal it. The bitter taste often associated with walnuts is actually the taste of rancidity. Fresh walnut should be sweet and creamy. The serious consumer must buy walnuts in the shell, nature's perfect packaging, or buy them shelled and immediately store them in the refrigerator or freezer. The cold halts the oxidation process. Eating a walnut that has been sitting in a clear plastic bin at room temperature for 6 months is a nutritional error. One must treat them like a fresh biological product, not a dry grain.
The culinary versatility of the walnut allows it to be integrated into the male diet with ease. They provide a textural crunch that replaces croutons and salads, adding healthy fats instead of processed carbohydrates. They can be blended into smoothies to add thickness and caloric density without spiking the glycemic index. For the vegan or plant-based athlete, the walnut is a lifeline, providing the density of calories and fats usually reserved for animal products. In conclusion, the walnut is a powerhouse of evolutionary biology. It is a seed that looks like a brain, protects the heart, and invigorates the reproductive system. It bridges the gap between the plant and animal world, offering a lipid profile that is essential for the flexibility and resilience of human tissue. In a world that is becoming increasingly toxic to male fertility and cognitive health, the walnut stands as a natural fortress. It is the vascular renaissance, a means of keeping the rivers of the body flowing and the mind sharp. To crack a walnut is to access a cache of ancient solar energy, stored in a complex matrix of fats and phenols, ready to fuel the modern man's ambition.
7. The Dark Alchemy, Cacao and the Vasodilation Protocol. To categorize dark chocolate alongside gummy bears or licorice is a taxonomic failure of the highest order. In its pure, unadulterated form, the cacao bean is not a confection. It is a complex pharmacological agent, a fermented seed that has served as a currency, a sacred offering, and a warrior's ration for over 3 millennia. The modern investigation into male performance has stripped away the milk and sugar that corrupted this ancient superfood, revealing the dark, bitter heart of the bean as one of the most potent cardiovascular and cognitive enhancers available to the human physiology. This is the Theobroma paradox, Greek for food of the gods, where the line between food and drug blurs. For the high-performing male, dark chocolate, specifically varieties exceeding 70.
Historical records suggest the Aztec Emperor Montezuma understood this intuitively. He reportedly consumed up to 50 cups of a bitter, spiced cacao beverage daily before visiting his harem. While the quantity may be exaggerated legend, the physiological principle is sound. The cacao bean provides the vascular priming necessary for sustained virility. However, the dark alchemy extends beyond the blood and into the brain. Cacao is a psychoactive substance containing a unique profile of methylxanthines. The most prominent is theobromine, a cousin to caffeine, but with a distinctly different pharmacokinetic profile. While caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant that can cause jitters and vasoconstriction, narrowing of blood vessels at high doses, theobromine is a vasodilator and a muscle relaxant. It provides a sustained, gentle energy lift without the crash, improving blood flow to the brain, cerebral perfusion. This results in enhanced cognitive function, specifically in areas of focus, working memory, and reaction time. For the man operating in high-pressure environments, dark chocolate offers a flow state in a square, calming the nervous system while sharpening the senses. Furthermore, dark chocolate modulates the neurochemistry of mood. It contains phenylethylamine, PEA, often called the love drug, because the brain releases it during moments of romantic euphoria. While oral PEA is broken down quickly, its presence in cacao, combined with anandamide, an endogenous cannabinoid known as the bliss molecule, creates a subtle but tangible lift in mood. Perhaps more critical for the stressed modern male is the impact on cortisol. Clinical trials have demonstrated that regular consumption of dark chocolate reduces the secretion of cortisol and catecholamines, adrenaline, in highly stressed individuals. Cortisol is catabolic. It eats muscle tissue and kills testosterone. By blunting the cortisol response, dark chocolate acts as a metabolic shield, preserving the anabolic environment of the body. The sourcing and processing of this superfood is where the investigation becomes a critical consumer warning. Not all dark chocolate is created equal. The vast majority of commercial chocolate undergoes a process called Dutching or alkalinization. Developed in the 19th century to darken the cocoa and reduce its natural bitterness, this chemical wash destroys up to 90% of the beneficial flavonols.
A bar of chocolate can be 85% cacao and yet be nutritionally void if it has been heavily Dutched. The discerning male must look for natural, non-alkalized cocoa. The bitterness is not a defect, it is the medicine. The astringency on the tongue is the sensory marker of high epicatechin content. We must also address the terroir of cacao. Just as with wine or coffee, the genetic strain and geography of the bean dictates its chemical potency. There are 3 main varieties: Criollo, the rare, fragile, complex prince of cocos; Forastero, the robust, high-yield workhorse of the industry; and Trinitario, a hybrid. The Criollo beans, particularly those from South America, often possess a more nuanced flavor profile and higher antioxidant capacity. However, the soil brings a darker element to the story: heavy metals. The cacao tree is a bioaccumulator, meaning it pulls elements from the soil into the bean. Recent investigations by consumer watchdog groups have found concerning levels of cadmium and lead in many premium dark chocolate brands. Cadmium is often naturally occurring in the volcanic soils of Latin America, while lead is typically a result of post-harvest contamination during drying and transport. This presents a paradox. The most antioxidant-rich chocolates can sometimes carry a toxic payload. The solution is not abstinence, but diligence. Sourcing from regions with lower soil cadmium, like parts of Africa or specific carefully monitored farms in South America, and choosing brands that publish third-party heavy metal testing is the protocol for the health-conscious male. The dose is also a matter of precision. This is a calorically dense food, comprised largely of cocoa butter, a saturated fat. While cocoa butter is metabolically neutral, containing stearic acid which does not raise LDL cholesterol, consuming it in excess leads to caloric surplus. The minimum effective dose identified in literature hovers around 20 to 40 grams per day of 85% dark chocolate. This provides the optimal load of flavonols to trigger vasodilation without disrupting metabolic balance. It is consumed pre-workout or in the mid-afternoon slump, utilized as a functional tool rather than a dessert. Culturally, the consumption of high-percentage dark chocolate represents a return to the masculine origins of the substance. For thousands of years, cacao was a bitter drink for men, warriors, priests, and kings. It was mixed with chilies, maize, and water, a gritty,
frothy concoction designed to fortify the spirit. The addition of milk and sugar was a European innovation, intended to make the drink palatable to the aristocracy of the 17th century, effectively castrating the potency of the bean. The modern bean-to-bar movement is a renaissance of the original intent. It treats cacao as a complex agricultural product, fermenting and roasting the beans to highlight their inherent flavors: leather, tobacco, berries, earth. In the future landscape of nutrition, we can expect to see clinical chocolate, bars standardized for epicatechin content, marketed specifically as vascular supplements. But until then, the dark chocolate bar remains the most accessible, enjoyable biohack for the male physiology. It is a daily ritual that signals the body to relax, open the vessels, and focus the mind. It is the edible definition of bittersweet, teaching the palate to appreciate the complexity of real food over the hyper-palatable sweetness of processed sugar. To break a square of 90% dark chocolate is to partake in a lineage of power, ingesting the very chemistry that fueled the empires of the Maya and the Aztec.
8. The nitrate engine, spinach and the green hydraulics. If dark chocolate is the ancient biochemical luxury, spinach is the utilitarian workhorse of the vegetable kingdom. For nearly a century, this leafy green has been shrouded in a mythology largely constructed by a cartoon sailor named Popeye. The cultural osmosis of Popeye squeezing a can of spinach to achieve instant superhuman strength was dismissed by skeptics as wartime propaganda or a simple exaggeration of iron content. However, in a twist of scientific vindication, modern physiology has proven that the cartoon was essentially correct, but for the wrong reason. It was not the iron that gave Popeye his power, it was the nitrates. Spinach is the premier fuel for the nitrate-nitric oxide pathway, a biological mechanism that allows the male body to perform more work with less oxygen. It is the closest thing to a natural turbocharger for the human engine. To understand the unique power of spinach, we must differentiate its mechanism from the other nitrate oxide boosters on this list. Foods like walnuts and dark chocolate rely on the enzyme eNOS to synthesize nitric oxide from internal substrates. This enzymatic pathway requires oxygen to function. Spinach, however, utilizes an alternative backup system that becomes increasingly important during hypoxic, low-oxygen conditions, such as the final reps of a heavy squat set or the last mile of a sprint. Spinach is rich in inorganic nitrates, NO3. When a man eats spinach, these nitrates are not immediately absorbed. They are secreted into the saliva, where commensal bacteria on the tongue reduce them into nitrates, NO2. When these nitrates are swallowed and hit the acidic environment of the stomach and subsequently enter the bloodstream, they are converted into nitric oxide, NO. This pathway is oxygen independent. This means spinach provides a vascular boost exactly when the body needs it most, when the muscles are screaming for air and the enzymatic machinery is failing. The implications for endurance and stamina are staggering. Studies performed at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden demonstrated that dietary nitrate supplementation, equivalent to a large bowl of spinach, significantly reduced the oxygen cost of exercise. Participants could cycle at the same intensity while consuming less oxygen, effectively improving their mitochondrial efficiency. For the male athlete, this translates to a higher VO2 max and delayed time to exhaustion.
It is not merely about health, it is about performance metrics. The nitrates in spinach dilate the blood vessels, delivering a surge of nutrient-rich blood to the skeletal muscles, creating the sensation of the pump that is so coveted in bodybuilding culture. But the investigation into spinach reveals a more controversial and potent compound lurking within the leaves, ecdysterone. This is a phytosteroid, a steroid hormone found in plants and insects. In insects, it controls molting and growth. In humans, recent research suggests it binds to estrogen receptor beta, ER-beta, in muscle tissue, triggering protein synthesis without the androgenic side effects of synthetic anabolic steroids. A study commissioned by the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, found that athletes supplementing with ecdysterone, extracted from spinach, experienced significantly greater increases in muscle mass and bench press strength compared to a placebo group. The results were so potent that the researchers recommended ecdysterone be added to the list of banned substances. It hasn't been banned yet, meaning that spinach effectively contains a legal natural anabolic agent. To reach the dosages used in the study, one would need to consume massive quantities of spinach, but the presence of the compound validates the vegetable's status as a muscle builder. Beyond the exotic chemistry of nitrates and phytosteroids, spinach is a foundational source of magnesium. As discussed with pumpkin seeds, magnesium is the linchpin of energy metabolism and testosterone maintenance. Spinach is one of the few vegetables that provides a substantial yield of magnesium per calorie. This makes it essential for recovery. After the tissue damage of a workout, magnesium helps relax the muscles, prevent cramping, and lower the sympathetic nervous system's fight-or-flight response, allowing the body to shift into repair mode. Furthermore, spinach is rich in glycine betaine, a compound that lowers homocysteine levels. High homocysteine is a major risk factor for heart disease and stroke and can damage the endothelial lining. By keeping homocysteine in check, spinach protects the vascular highways that the nitrates are working to open. However, the spinach protocol is fraught with bioavailability traps.
The primary antagonist is oxalic acid. Spinach is extremely high in oxalates, which are anti-nutrients that bind to calcium and iron, forming crystals.
This binding process renders the iron in raw spinach largely useless to the body, and in susceptible individuals can lead to kidney stones. This is the great irony of the iron myth. Spinach has iron, but you can't absorb much of it from a raw salad. The investigation reveals that cooking is the key to unlocking spinach's potential. Blanching or boiling spinach for just 1 minute and discarding the water can reduce oxalate levels by up to 50% without destroying the heat-stable nitrates. Furthermore, the presence of fat is non-negotiable. Spinach is packed with vitamin K1, essential for blood clotting and bone health, and beta-carotene, both of which are fat-soluble. Eating spinach without a fat source like olive oil, eggs, or steak means flushing these nutrients down the toilet. The classic cream spinach of the steakhouse is, accidentally, a nutritionally superior preparation method, assuming high-quality fats are used. There is also a critical oral component to the nitrate pathway. Because the conversion of nitrate to nitrite depends on the bacteria on the tongue, the use of antibacterial mouthwash can destroy the benefits of spinach. Studies have shown that using chlorhexidine mouthwash abolishes the blood pressure lowering and performance enhancing effects of nitrate-rich foods. For the man maximizing his performance, the microbiome of the mouth must be respected as the first stage of digestion. Chewing the spinach thoroughly is essential to maximize the surface area for these bacteria to do their work. Historically, spinach has traveled a long road to the Western plate. Originating in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, it was known as aspanakh. It was introduced to China in the 7th century as the Persian vegetable and brought to Europe by the Moors via Spain. It was always valued as a cooling, restorative food. In the 16th century, Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France, loved spinach so much that she requested it at every meal, leading to the culinary term Florentine for any dish served with spinach. This royal lineage contradicts the modern view of spinach as a bland health food. It was a delicacy of the courts before it became the fuel of the cartoon sailor. In the context of modern agriculture, spinach is a dirty crop. It has a large surface area and grows close to the ground, making it a sponge for pesticides. It consistently ranks on the dirty dozen list of produce with the highest pesticide residues.
For the male concerned with endocrine disruptors, chemicals that mimic estrogen and lower testosterone, organic spinach is a mandatory expense. The industrial pesticides used on conventional greens can negate the hormonal benefits the vegetable provides. The future of spinach, however, lies in hydroponics and vertical farming. Controlled Environment Agriculture, CEA, allows growers to manipulate the light spectrum and nutrient solution to drastically increase the nitrate and ecdysterone content of the leaves, creating super spinach specifically designed for athletic performance. The culinary integration of spinach is effortless, which is its greatest strength. It has a mild flavor that disappears into smoothies, sauces, and omelets. This allows for volume eating. A man can easily consume 200 grams of cooked spinach in a single sitting, providing a massive bolus of nitrates, magnesium, and vitamins. It acts as a nutritional insurance policy, covering the micronutrient gaps left by a protein-heavy diet. It also contains thylakoids, membrane structures that have been shown to slow down fat digestion and increase satiety hormones like GLP-1, helping to curb appetite and manage body composition. Ultimately, spinach is the green engine of the male diet. It is not just a side dish, it is a performance enhancer that operates on the cutting edge of vascular biology. It allows the heart to pump more efficiently, the muscles to contract with more force, and the body to recover with greater speed. Whether it's the nitrates dilating the arteries or the ecdysterone signaling the muscle fibers to grow, spinach pulls its weight in the pursuit of physical excellence. It validates the ancestral wisdom that strength comes from the earth, specifically from the dark, bitter leaves that turn sunlight into biological power. To eat spinach is to oxygenate the ambition of the man.
9. The kinetic capsule, bananas, and the electrolyte matrix. In the pantheon of athletic nutrition, the banana suffers from a crisis of familiarity. It is the most consumed fruit in the world, a staple of the lunchbox and the finish line alike, leading to a dismissal of its biochemical complexity. We see it as common, pedestrian, and basic. However, an investigative deep dive into the Mucigenus reveals that the banana is not merely a fruit, it is a bioengineered energy canister, perfectly designed by nature and refined by human selection to address the specific metabolic demands of the active male. It is the kinetic capsule, a self-contained unit of carbohydrates and electrolytes that dictates the difference between sustained power output and the catastrophic muscular failure known as cramping. To understand the banana's placement on this list, one must look past its ubiquity and examine the precision of its nutrient delivery system.
The headline nutrient, of course, is potassium. The cultural association between bananas and potassium is so strong it has become a cliché, yet few understand the physiological mechanics at play. Potassium is not just a mineral, it is the primary cation of the intracellular fluid. It works in a perpetual electrified dance with sodium, which resides outside the cell. This relationship, known as the sodium-potassium pump, is the fundamental mechanism of life. It generates the electrical gradients required for nerve impulses to fire and for muscle fibers to contract. For the male athlete, this pump is the engine of movement. During intense exertion, whether lifting heavy iron or running endurance distances, potassium is lost through sweat and utilized in the metabolic inferno of the muscle cell. When the balance tips, when the gradient fails, the result is the involuntary, agonizing contraction we call a cramp. While avocados and potatoes technically contain more potassium by weight, the banana offers this mineral in a uniquely bioavailable matrix, often delivering over 400 milligrams per serving alongside the carbohydrates needed to transport it. It is the rapid deployment solution to electrolyte destabilization. However, the true power of the banana lies in its carbohydrate chronology. The banana is a shapeshifter. Its nutritional profile changes drastically depending on its stage of ripeness, allowing the strategic male to utilize it for different biological goals. A green, unripe banana is composed largely of resistant starch.
This is a type of carbohydrate that resists digestion in the small intestine and ferments in the colon. It acts as a prebiotic, feeding the beneficial bacteria of the gut microbiome and improving insulin sensitivity. For the man seeking metabolic flexibility and fat loss, the green banana is a tool for satiety and blood sugar control. As the banana ripens and turns yellow with brown spots, an enzymatic process converts this starch into simple sugars, glucose, fructose, and sucrose. This is high-octane rocket fuel. The spotted banana has higher glycemic index, meaning it spikes insulin and drives glycogen rapidly into the muscle cells. This makes it the ultimate pre-workout or intra-workout food. It provides immediate, accessible energy that spares the liver's glycogen stores, delaying fatigue and maintaining the intensity of the session. We must also investigate the neurochemical impact of this fruit. The banana is a significant source of vitamin B6, pyridoxine. A single medium banana provides roughly 33% of the recommended daily intake. B6 is the rate-limiting cofactor in the synthesis of neurotransmitters. You cannot make dopamine, the molecule of drive, motivation, and pleasure, without B6. You cannot make serotonin, the molecule of mood stability and confidence, without B6. In a modern environment where men are plagued by brain fog and low motivation, the banana acts as a neurosupport agent. It ensures that the chemical pathways for drive are open and supplied with raw materials. Furthermore, bananas contain small amounts of tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin. While the levels are not as high as in turkey or pumpkin seeds, the presence of carbohydrates in the banana triggers an insulin release that clears competing amino acids from the blood, allowing tryptophan to cross the blood-brain barrier more easily. Thus, the banana is a mood-regulating food, a natural defense against the irritability and stress that sap male vitality. The digestive armor provided by the banana is another critical yet overlooked aspect of performance. High-intensity training shunts blood away from the stomach to the muscles, often leading to gastric distress or runner's gut. The banana is unique in its content of pectin, a soluble fiber that creates a soothing gel in the digestive tract. It normalizes bowel function, preventing both constipation and diarrhea. It is part of the clinical brat diet: bananas, rice, applesauce.
Toast, for a reason. It is arguably the most easily digested solid food on the planet. For the athlete who needs to eat close to competition time, the banana is the safest bet. It provides caloric density without the risk of bloating or heaviness that comes from complex fats or proteins. It is the fuel that disappears, leaving only energy behind. However, the investigation into the banana takes a dark historical turn when we examine the Cavendish singularity. The banana we eat today, the Cavendish variety, is a genetic clone. Every single Cavendish banana is genetically identical to the one next to it. This monoculture is the result of a corporate history defined by the United Fruit Company, now Chiquita, which toppled governments in Central America to secure cheap land and labor, giving rise to the term Banana Republic. This dark history of imperialism built the logistics network that allows a tropical fruit to be sold for pennies in New York or London. But this genetic uniformity makes the banana uniquely vulnerable. The Gros Michel, the previous dominant variety, was wiped out by Panama disease in the 1950s. Today, a new strain of the fungus, TR4, threatens the Cavendish. This fragility serves as a philosophical warning about our food systems. We have traded diversity for efficiency. The wise consumer should, when possible, seek out alternative varieties, red bananas, burro bananas, or manzanos, which offer different antioxidant profiles and a richer, more complex sweetness, breaking the monotony of the industrial clone. There is also a persistent myth regarding bananas and weight gain due to their sugar content. This is a misunderstanding of metabolic context. The sugar in a banana is packaged with fiber, water, and micronutrients. It does not behave like the refined high-fructose corn syrup in a soda. For the active male, the carbohydrates in a banana are functional. They are burned, not stored. The fear of fruit in the low-carb community has led many men to avoid this powerhouse to their detriment. The glycogen replenishment provided by a banana post-workout is essential for activating the mTOR pathway, the signal for muscle growth. Insulin is anabolic. Spiking insulin with a banana after lifting weights stops muscle breakdown and shuttles amino acids into the tissue. The banana is the switch that flips the body from catabolism, breaking down, to anabolism, building up. Furthermore, we must touch upon the trace presence of the enzyme bromelain. While primarily associated with pineapples, bananas contain related enzyme systems and nutrients that have been linked in traditional medicine to increase libido. The mechanism is likely indirect, mediated through improved blood flow, potassium, and energy levels, B vitamins. But the reputation of the banana as a phallic fertility symbol is ancient. In Hindu tradition, the banana tree is a symbol of fertility and prosperity. The fruit's shape is an obvious visual metaphor, but the biological reality supports the symbolism. It provides the energy required for reproductive activity. The convenience factor of the banana cannot be overstated in a top 10 list focused on performance. Consistency is the key to results. A superfood that requires hours of preparation or costs a fortune will eventually be dropped from the routine. The banana comes in its own biodegradable, pathogen-resistant packaging. It requires no washing, no tools to open, and no refrigeration. It is the ultimate fast food for the primal male. It allows for the immediate rectification of energy deficits. Whether stuck in traffic, sitting in a boardroom, or walking to the squat rack, the banana is the accessible energetic bridge. In the final analysis, the banana is the foundational carbohydrate of the male performance diet. It addresses the electrical needs of the nervous system through potassium, the fuel needs of the muscular system through glucose, and the chemical needs of the brain through vitamin B6. It is a humble fruit with a complex resume, a survivor of historical turmoil and biological threats. It represents the efficient transfer of solar energy into kinetic movement. To peel a banana is to unlock a capsule of potential energy, a clean-burning fuel that has powered champions across every discipline of human physical endeavor. It is the reliable, unpretentious engine of the athlete.
10. The Crimson Reactor, Pomegranate and the Mitochondrial Renaissance. We conclude our investigation with a fruit that is less a food and more a biological artifact of power. The pomegranate, Punica granatum, is a nutritional anomaly, a sphere of tough, leathery skin protecting hundreds of ruby-red arils, each bursting with tart, astringent juice. Throughout history, it has been the symbol of blood, death, fertility, and resurrection. It is the fruit that bound Persephone to the underworld. It is the apple that some scholars believe actually tempted Eve in the Garden of Eden. But stripping away the mythology reveals a scientific reality that is even more compelling. The pomegranate is the crimson reactor, arguably the most potent natural tool for vascular health, testosterone preservation, and mitochondrial anti-aging available to the modern male. It is the Viagra of nature, not by marketing hyperbole, but by biochemical mechanism. The core of the pomegranate's power lies in its mastery of the nitric oxide pathway. We have discussed this with dark chocolate and spinach, but pomegranate operates through a different synergistic mechanism. It is rich in a unique class of polyphenols called punicologens. These are massive, complex molecules found nowhere else in nature. When ingested, punicologens act as powerful antioxidants that specifically protect nitric oxide from oxidative destruction. Nitric oxide is a volatile molecule. It degrades quickly in the blood, especially in men with high stress or inflammation. Pomegranate juice acts as a stabilizer, extending the half-life of nitric oxide in the system. The result is sustained, powerful vasodilation. Clinical studies have shown that daily consumption of pomegranate juice can reverse arterial plaque accumulation, lower systolic blood pressure, and significantly improve erectile function in men with mild to moderate ED. It turns the cardiovascular system into a frictionless highway. But the investigation delves deeper into the engines of the cell, the mitochondria. This is the frontier of anti-aging science. As men age, their mitochondria become damaged and inefficient, leading to a loss of energy, muscle atrophy, sarcopenia, and metabolic decline. The body has a natural cleaning process called mitophagy, where it recycles these broken mitochondria. However, this process slows down with age. Enter the pomegranate. When the L-tannins in pomegranate reach the gut,
the microbiome converts them into a compound called urolithin A. Urolithin A is a molecular signal that reactivates mitophagy. It tells the cell to take out the trash. Research published in top-tier medical journals has demonstrated that urolithin A supplementation increases muscle strength and endurance in aging populations without changes in exercise habits. It essentially rejuvenates the muscle tissue at the cellular level. This is a profound discovery. The pomegranate contains the code to reverse cellular aging, but it requires a healthy gut microbiome to unlock it. This highlights the symbiotic relationship between the man and his food. The fruit provides the key, but the man's internal biology must turn it. The hormonal implications of the pomegranate are equally striking. In the testosterone wars where modern life assaults male hormones from every angle, pomegranate is a shield. It possesses potent anti-aromatase properties. Aromatase is the enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen. By inhibiting this enzyme, pomegranate helps maintain a higher ratio of free testosterone. Furthermore, the extreme antioxidant capacity of the fruit, 3 times that of red wine or green tea, protects the Leydig cells in the testes from oxidative stress. The testes are highly susceptible to damage from free radicals, which can impair sperm production and testosterone synthesis. Pomegranate acts as a testicular antioxidant, preserving the functional integrity of the reproductive glands. A study from Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh found that men who drank pomegranate juice daily for 2 weeks experienced a surge in salivary testosterone levels by an average of 24%, alongside a drop in blood pressure and improvement in mood. We must also confront the prostate paradox. Just as with pumpkin seeds, pomegranate shows remarkable promise in the management of prostate health. The specific polyphenols in the juice have been shown to induce apoptosis, programmed cell death in prostate cancer cells in vitro. They inhibit the proliferation of these cells and reduce the secretion of prostate-specific antigen, PSA. For the aging male, the pomegranate is a chemopreventative agent, a dietary strategy to keep the prostate, the Achilles heel of the male anatomy, in check. It is a fruit that seems chemically designed to protect the specific organs that define maleness. Culturally, the pomegranate demands effort. Unlike the banana, which yields easily,
The pomegranate fights back. Extracting the arils is a messy, laborious process that stains the hands red. This resistance is part of its value. It forces a ritual of extraction. In the Middle East, particularly in Iran, ancient Persia, the pomegranate is a culinary cornerstone, used in stews like fesanjan, duck with walnut and pomegranate paste, to impart a depth of flavor that is both sweet and sour. This flavor profile, astringency, is crucial. In traditional Chinese medicine, astringent foods are believed to hold fluids and energy, qi, in the body. The dry, puckering mouthfeel of pomegranate juice is the sensory marker of the tannins, tightening the tissues and toning the system. The juice versus fruit debate is relevant here. While the arils contain fiber and are structurally superior, the majority of the clinical research has been conducted using 100% pure pomegranate juice. This is because the rind and the white pith, which are pressed during juicing, contain high concentrations of the beneficial punicalagins. To get the therapeutic dose, one would have to eat massive amounts of arils, including the bitter white parts. Therefore, for the purpose of performance enhancement, a high-quality, organic, not-from-concentrate juice is often the most practical delivery system. However, one must be wary of the sugar content. It is a natural sugar, but it is potent. The best protocol is to consume it pre-workout, where the sugar can be utilized for immediate glycolytic energy, or to mix a smaller amount with water as a daily tonic. The symbolism of the pomegranate serves as a fitting conclusion to our list. It is a fruit that looks like a heart. When you cut it open, it bleeds. It represents the vitality of life that must be protected within a tough exterior. For the modern male, it offers a connection to the ancient concept of the warrior king, a figure who possesses both the capacity for violence, strength/testosterone, and the wisdom of stewardship, health/longevity. The pomegranate supports the blood that fuels the erection and the muscle, and it supports the mitochondria that fuel the will. In the final assessment, the pomegranate is the crown jewel of the male performance diet. It brings the list full circle, from the zinc of the oyster to the nitric oxide of the fruit. It is not a passive food, it is an active biological intervention. To drink the juice of the pomegranate is to ingest the condensed solar power of the summer.
Captured in a crimson liquid that scours the arteries and renews the cells, it is the ultimate top-off for the male tank, ensuring that the machinery of the body is not just surviving, but thriving. It is the red elixir of endurance, standing as the final, vibrant testament to the power of food to rewrite our biological destiny.